Hello, and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. Before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to pop on here with a quick announcement to invite you, the listener, to my free live webinar coming up Tuesday, May 16th at 6 p.m. Central Time, called Fuel Better, Run Faster. This is an all-new webinar. If you've been to any of my previous live events, then this is a completely new live event that I'm having. I have never shared this particular one before. And this is a webinar for runners of really any skill level. If you're just getting into the sport of running, or if you've, had quite a few years of experience, but you're still looking for the key to your success and still looking for ways that you can improve your fueling strategy and continue to get better, get stronger, and really, love running the way that you used to, then this webinar is perfect for you. So it's called Fuel Better, Run Faster. And in it, I will be sharing some of the most common mistakes that I see runners making with their fueling strategy, where so many runners are going wrong. And of course, my best tips and strategies, what you need in order to fix it so that you can reach your full performance potential. The link to register for this free webinar is going to be in the show notes. And so you can just head on over there, click on the registration page, and sign up. You'll get a confirmation email and more details, the Zoom link, all of that as we get closer to the date. So once again, that's a free live webinar. Runners of all skill levels, all experience levels are welcome to attend. That's called Fuel Better, Run Faster, coming up on Tuesday, May 16th. Can't wait to see you there. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about your investment into the sport of running, your investment in yourself as a runner, and of course, talking about the financial investment that comes along with being a runner. And this topic came to mind for me just with a lot of really big races that have taken place recently, and seeing how some people have gone about their training strategy, looking at the, really extensive financial investments that people have made into signing up for some of these big races, traveling to these big races. And what I hope you get out of today's episode is to start thinking a little bit more about your investment that you make into running and where maybe you can start to get a better return on that investment in the long run. So to start us off, running is often thought of as a cheap sport. And, you'll hear lots of people who say, oh, running costs nothing. All you have to do is just throw on a pair of shoes and head out the door, and it's completely free. And while running can be less expensive than maybe some other sports out there, it certainly isn't the inexpensive sport, or it's not always the inexpensive sport that maybe we're sold at the beginning of our running journey. If you are someone who's running very, very recreationally, just getting out for the sheer fun of it, just to get a little bit of exercise or movement throughout the week, and you're running fairly short distances, you live in a place where the weather is relatively consistent throughout the year, you don't have these really large temperature fluctuations or really significant weather conditions, extreme weather conditions that you might be running in, then yeah, running can definitely be a fairly inexpensive endeavor. Again, maybe compared to some other sports that we might participate in. But once you start upping the ante a little bit, and once you start having to invest a bit more money in gear, replacing your shoes a little bit more often, of course, as our mileage increases, we're going to be going through shoes a little bit more rapidly. We start to need maybe more technical gear, gear that's a little bit higher quality, gear that can handle the mileage that we're putting into it, gear that is made for running. Between fabrics and design and to wick sweat away and to hold up with the repetitiveness of running, just to have things not wear down or break down as quickly. We also then start to, probably need to think about investing in some of the other gear that runners can really benefit from using. And maybe that's going to be hydration, vests or belts or packs. Maybe it's going to be a running GPS watch. Maybe it's just that you're spending a little bit more money on a subscription to a running app that's tracking your distance and pace and things like that. Certainly, one of my favorite investments that I've made as a runner has been my wireless Bluetooth headphones. And a lot of these things are certainly not necessities. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, they sometimes feel like necessities. And I know that I certainly don't like to leave the house and go for a run without my headphones in, without my music playing. But no, I mean, I would survive and we can all get away with a lot less. But the reality is that as a lot of us get into bigger distances, we start signing up and training for races, there starts to become a bigger financial investment that we have to make in order to be successful with our running. And then once we start tacking on not just the things that we use on our day-to-day runs, but we start looking at needing more maybe fuel. And that of course could be just your typical grocery budget. You need to eat a little bit more with the more volume that you're putting in, but also maybe some specific sport foods. So gels, chews, sports drinks, hydration mixes. Again, some of that stuff can be relatively affordable, and some of the newer, maybe what we can call fancier products on the market can really start to add up. And there's definitely a significant cost if we're running a lot of miles that require that intra-run fueling. And of course, then when we start looking at the actual race scenarios, it's the registration fees for the races. It's traveling if we're going out of town or even out of the country for a race. There's definitely significant costs that we can incur with the sport of running. So it can really range everything from, yeah, just throwing on a pair of shoes and going out for a few miles, and that's kind of it. That's all. Bringing, an old plastic water bottle along with you, nothing fancy, no watch, no GPS, no gels and stuff like that. But the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, you really can start to reflect and think back to what maybe you've invested in your running in the last couple of years. And you might be surprised at how much you've ended up spending on things like race entrance fees and travel and gear and all of that. And I'll be the first to say, I mean, investing in your running and investing in yourself as a runner, I think is one of the most worthwhile investments that we can make. There's nothing better than having a goal, setting our sights on a race, getting ready for it, rewarding ourselves with this equipment that we like to use and keeps us motivated and things like that. So, this episode is not about making you feel as though you need to, cut back on expenses and try to save money on your running in different places. Cause I definitely think that running is a tremendously valuable investment because it's enjoyable and it gives us all of these experiences that we love, but also it's something that keeps us healthy and strong and fit for the rest of our lives. So it's definitely worthwhile in that respect. But what I want you to start thinking about today is, are you getting the best return on the investment that you're making in your running? So, a little exercise that you can do either while you're listening to this episode, or maybe you can pause the episode, or you can do this afterwards. But to sit down and just maybe make a little bit of a list of where have you made those investments in your running in the last year or couple of years, between all of these different things: gear, race registration fees, travel, and all of that kind of stuff, fuel and hydration mixes and everything. And just kind of total up what that looks like for you, and maybe you'll be surprised by the number. And what I see a lot is, people posting and sharing online that they've signed up for events. And then because they don't have the skills or knowledge around executing a training plan or increasing their nutrition to go along with the training that they're trying to do, maybe they're rushing into big races that their bodies just aren't ready for, they ultimately end up maybe not even showing up to the race, getting injured, not being able to run at all, which is devastating, or they're maybe not making it to the finish line. Or they're making it through but not feeling great about the quality of their performance, and maybe just stuck and frustrated with signing up for event after event after event, but never really getting better or feeling good going into that race day. And it's not to say that every time you race, you are always striving for a PR and you're always going to get better. And there's just sort of no limit to your performance. And it should just be this linear thing that gets better and better with every race that you go through. But when we're signed up for an event, we want to ensure that we have all of the resources and tools and things that we need to see that event through from the preparation and the signing up and the beginning stages of it, right through to having a successful race day, whatever that looks like for you. For so many people, it is just about making it to the start line, healthy and strong, and making it to the finish line. And that's fantastic if that's what your goal is, especially for your first races at a bigger distance. If you're signing up for your very first race or your very first race at a newer, bigger distance, then I think it's great to have a goal of just getting across the finish line and just making it through. Sometimes the added pressure of having a time goal on top of all that can just be too much and maybe a little bit unrealistic. But what I hate to see is when people have spent possibly thousands of dollars between race registration, traveling to an event. We look at things like Disney races and some of the big weekend long events that they have. And these are very, very expensive things to go and sign up for and to do, especially if you're maybe tacking on a Disney vacation afterwards. And then afterwards, they share that they got swept by the balloon ladies, or maybe they weren't able to actually get through the full weekend of events because they were just, too run down, too injured to be able to get through it. And so, while it's true that even with the best preparation, and even if we do go through a fabulous training plan, we execute it wonderfully from start to finish, and we have a great training cycle, unexpected things can happen on race day. I mean, it definitely happens to everybody. Weather, just maybe it's not your day, right? We saw in the recent Boston Marathon that happened to some of the, most elite athletes in the world, that it just wasn't their day. And the weather wasn't great, and all kinds of things can go wrong. But what I don't want you to do as a runner is to sell yourself short. And what I mean by that is sometimes there's a little bit of a mindset or a mentality around self sabotage that we can, do to ourselves. And this probably isn't something that you're doing on purpose. But as I describe more about what I mean, maybe you'll realize that this is something that you've been doing when you're signing up and participating in these events. And so self sabotage is really about, if I don't really try, then I can't actually fail. And I've certainly been guilty of this in areas of my life where it's easier to do something maybe a little bit half assed. It's easier to give something just a fraction of my intention or effort, because then if it doesn't go well, if I don't succeed, if it doesn't go as planned, well, I didn't really try anyway. It wasn't that important to me. It's no big deal. And this is basically what self sabotage is. When we don't give something our full effort, or we sometimes intentionally sabotage ourselves, we intentionally get in our own way, often because there's a fear around succeeding and maybe what that means, or there's a fear around failing and what that might mean. And when we're coming into running as someone who's maybe new to the sport, we're doing these things for the first time, maybe we don't have full support from friends, family. Maybe we don't have a really strong running community or network. This identity shift that we are becoming someone different than we were before. We are now, doing these different things and signing up for these different activities, having these different hobbies that are different than we did before and maybe different from our current social circle. That it's not as easy as just taking up running and signing up for a race and going through it. There's a lot of challenges that people can experience interpersonally when they are changing their identity and taking on these new challenges. And it it doesn't, you may not have expected that this episode today was going to go that deep into some of this stuff, but when we really stop and think about it and we look at maybe these patterns of I like to sign up for these races, but I never am able to see it through. I always get injured. I have never had a properly followed a training plan. I've never really done anything that formal and stuff like that. I want you to really reflect and think about, is there some component of self sabotage going on? Because if we really do give these endeavors our best effort and we really try so hard to follow this great training plan from start to finish, maybe we hire a coach and do all of these things and we still don't reach our goal, that's twice as devastating, that's twice as hard than kind of half-assing it and then being able to say, oh yeah, well, you know what, I mean, whatever, I it wasn't really that serious, it didn't really matter that much to me. We're protecting ourselves, and there's definitely a self-preservation aspect to getting into something like self-sabotage. So if you are, reflecting today on the investments that you've made in your running and you're thinking about where your financial investment has gone as a runner, how you feel about that, how you feel about that return on investment that you've gotten, and also maybe where your energy investment has gone, your time and effort has gone, then it's great to start thinking about, where do we want to shift things and where can we maybe do things a little bit differently or a little bit better so that we can get more out of what we put into the sport of running. Because, investing in your nutrition and training strategy is a fantastic idea. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, I think running as a whole is a great way to invest in ourselves. It's a great way to spend our time. It's a great financial investment to make. There's so many wonderful things that running can do for us, both as a runner, but then also in our lives outside of running. And I really believe that we get a significant return on investment in anything that we invest in our nutrition and training strategy will just pay off in the long run. And so the first major return that we're going to get with this proper investment in our training and our nutrition strategy is going to be around our enjoyment and our longevity in the sport of running. And the big sort of payoff here, the reason that this is such a huge thing is because when people aren't able to get through a training plan without getting injured, or they're always feeling like running just wears them right down and is so exhausting and so hard. And, it really takes away from our enjoyment of running and ultimately our motivation and drive to keep doing it. I'm sometimes amazed at how long people can suffer and struggle through their runs with a poor fueling strategy or an inappropriate training strategy. Yet they sit for so many years, and that's really commendable, but also not the way that it's supposed to be. And so when we look at how we can really like and enjoy and maybe even love running, and then also our ability and our motivation and drive to stick with it in the long run, that is one place that having that proper nutrition and training plan makes such a huge difference. The other benefit, of course, is that when we have a dialed in nutrition and training plan, we're going to wind up with fewer injuries, and especially the types of injuries that can ultimately sideline us for good and take us completely out of the sport of running. And this isn't necessarily a motivation or a discipline or an enjoyment problem, but there are so many runners who just keep getting hurt and keep hurting the same areas that it just gets to the point where they're not able to continue to run at the volume or at the quality that they really want to. And that's a terrible thing to see, and so much of that is maybe preventable, hopefully preventable, if we are making those smart investments and we're doing all those things that we need to be doing to make sure that we're getting a return on the investments that we're making. And then of course, we have to mention the long-term health benefits of having an overall healthier eating plan, balanced relationship with food and exercise, and just feeling really good and confident about the things that we're doing. Again, this is not specific or unique to the running community, but certainly it's very prevalent in the running community that there are so many people who really struggle with yo yo dieting, weight loss and regain cycles, and feel really stuck with what they're doing and how they can reach their performance goals, but also things like weight or body composition goals. So, when we are making that smart investment and including that nutrition and training as part of everything else that we do with our running, so right alongside our new shoes and new gear, should be the same amount of intention and investing in how we fuel ourselves for all of those miles, right along with signing up for the races that we're going to do and spending money on things like travel and hotels and meals and all of that stuff while we're on the road. We all should be making sure that the training plan that we're following is at that same quality as everything else that we're putting our time and our money into. So, the last thing that I want to talk about today is how you can start investing more in yourself as a runner. And it doesn't always have to be about investing more money or in investing financially into the sport of running and just buying all the things and kind of adding to those extra costs. Instead, we can think about how we invest our time and how we invest our energy. And the first thing that I really would encourage you to do is to start planting those seeds of learning about proper fueling and training strategies. There are plenty of free resources, online content, and people who provide a lot of value to audiences online for no cost at all. So it's like I said, it's not always about having to like buy a thing or invest more money in something to get a result. Start paying attention to these things and start dialing in and tuning into them a little bit more rather than them always being maybe an afterthought or something that we're just completely unaware of altogether. I can't tell you how many times I see comments like that online where people just have no idea how they should eat or how they should properly train to reach their running goals. And so, just by spending a little bit of time looking for those reliable sources of information, following, podcasts like this one, my Instagram, if you aren't already connected with me there, you can find me at Steph the Runner's Dietitian. I have blogs on my website. I have free guides that you can download for both nutrition and strength training to help you start to do some of these things so that you can really get that return on everything else that you're investing in your running. Now, the other place that we can think about our investments is maybe racing a little bit less often. And this is another thing that I see a lot of runners out there doing is they're racing almost every weekend. They're signing up for every event they possibly can. And while it's great, and a lot of these events are raising money for things and they like the social aspect or they're running with a group and it's great to race. I think it's such a wonderful experience. And I love getting a medal at the end of a run as much as anybody else does. But if we can be a little bit smarter about our investments, we maybe can invest more time instead in preparing for a few key races throughout the year rather than signing up for every single thing that comes our way. And what that can do is, if you're the runner who's struggling with performance on race day, you're racing all the time, but you're just not getting faster or you're not getting stronger or you're not feeling better about your race day experiences. Maybe you're not finishing a lot of the races that you're signing up for, you're DNFing pretty frequently. then taking a step back from racing rather than continuing to try again at the race day part of it, instead taking some time to train properly, build up your base, work up to that better quality mileage and the better quality workouts that you need to see that whole process, that whole training cycle through from start to finish. So we can invest more time in learning about the proper fueling and training strategies that we need, again, from reliable sources online, finding those pieces of content, finding those people who are providing lots of value, lots of information to their audiences for free. And then we can look at where we are spending some of our money as runners and maybe shifting around how often we're racing and the amount of money that maybe we're spending if we're continually feeling a little bit disappointed or not super happy or successful with how our races are going. And then we can start looking at, how we're investing our money and maybe where we want to make different financial investments in our sport of running. And the first thing is going to be, of course, the gear and the quality of the gear that we're buying. You can invest in yourself as a runner and maybe you can feel like a runner. I mean, we all know that if you run, you're a runner, but it's often about how we feel on the inside and how serious, quote unquote, of a runner we feel like on the inside. And so by investing in ourselves with quality gear, comfortable gear, gear that will last, it is durable and works for us, that is going to dramatically increase our enjoyment of running and can add a lot to our motivation and our adherence to sticking with the sport. And just I was talking before about my headphones and how much I love my wireless headphones. I am someone who has a really hard time with headphones. They never fit in my ears properly. I struggled for so many years with wired headphones and even some previous wireless versions that I had that just did not stay in. I had to like bobby pins and headbands and, trying to MacGyver all of these different things to keep these darn headphones in my ears. And that made it really hard when you just don't have the right stuff. It's a small thing, but that discomfort makes such a difference. And same goes if you are not investing in a pair of quality shoes that you can wear as you're running. That's so important to have good quality shoes that are going to feel good, keep you injury free, are appropriate for your feet and the distance that you're doing. And, even little things like having good quality sports bras and pants that don't fall down as you're running and underwear that doesn't chafe in all these terrible areas and socks that don't give you blisters. Just simply investing in quality gear can make such a difference in your enjoyment, your comfort, and of course, your injury prevention and longevity in the sport. So that is one place that we can look at our financial investment into running and maybe make a big difference in our ability to stick with it. And then, the last thing that we have to talk about today is those bigger investments of working with a coach or a nutrition professional who can really help you dial in those race day strategies and those training cycle strategies so you can start to see that bigger return on your race day investments. And this isn't something that's only right or should only be for elite athletes or people who are, actively trying to PR at every event that they do. There are plenty of goals that we can have for ourselves with our running that have nothing to do with placing in a race, even maybe making like the top 10 or top 100 in a race. There are so many of us that are just getting out there for the sheer enjoyment of it. We're not expecting to win. We're just there to better ourselves, challenge ourselves, and have a really strong, solid feeling race day experience. And so, this is one place that I highly recommend any runner who enjoys racing and wants to do more of it, but really wants to get the best result that they can, feeling accomplished and really feeling like you gave something your best effort and really gave something your all. Then spending some of that money and investing in working with a coach and working with someone who can help you put all of those pieces together can make a world of difference. So you can definitely make different investments with your time, your effort, your energy, of thinking about your fueling and your training as a core part of being a successful runner. But then also, we maybe could make some shifts in our financial investments into running to get even a bigger, greater return on everything that we're putting into this sport. So, at the end of the day, I want you to start thinking about your investment into running, your time, your energy, your finances. If you haven't already done that little exercise that I suggested where you sit and you make a list of, the different expenses and costs that you've incurred with your running over the last few years, then I would really recommend and encourage you to do that, to look at where those things are going and then start to think, am I getting the return that I wanted or that I was hoping for? And if not, why not? Is it an issue of self sabotage and maybe not feeling like you're worth the investment? Is it something to do with your mindset, maybe not feeling like you deserve success or feeling like you should earn those medals? Or is it something going on there? Or is it maybe that you just didn't realize that there's such a huge difference that nutrition and proper training can really make with all of this? And just as much as it can be a mindset problem for so many people, it's also just that a lot of runners are completely unaware of the value of having that quality nutrition and training plan as we're getting ready for a race. If you are looking for a coach, you're looking for some help with all of this stuff, your eating, your training approach, your strength, your recovery, your injury risk, if all of these things are things that you need help with, then I would love to work with you. And you can do that by joining my online program. It's called the Fuel Train Recover Club. This is an online program that is great for runners of all levels. So even if you're just getting into running or you've been doing it for years, but you really feel like you need a more tuned in, dialed in nutrition and training plan, then the Fuel Train Recover Club really has everything you need to make all those pieces come together. Nutrition, information, resources, sample meal plans and recipes, training plans, recovery information, both nutrition and training with recovery in mind. And we also have live coaching opportunities where you can meet with me, talk about where you're struggling, get some one on one help, and of course, meet other runners in our live group coaching calls. So, enrollment for the Fuel Train Recover Club is currently open. So, you can join right now, and I will link to that website page in the show notes for this episode. So that is all for today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.